Let me officially once again welcome you all. I'm truly delighted to welcome you all from South Korea. Hope you and your family are safe and healthy. As Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center has always endeavored to keep up with its mission of preserving and promoting the rich cultural heritage of India, we promise to bring glimpses of the diverse cultural canvas of India at your doorsteps, wherever you are in the world, promoting soft power in its truest sense and contributing to its rich civilizational legacy and cultural vibrancy. For those who have joined here for the first time, let me briefly introduce our cultural center to you all. Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, or the Indian Cultural Center as it is popularly known, is the cultural wing of the Embassy of India in Seoul, promoting Indian culture in the Republic of Korea, fulfilling a long-held desire to provide a platform to showcase India's rich cultural heritage and serve as the nodal point for cultural exchanges between India and the Republic of Korea. This center was established on 1st of July 2011. Since its inception, center has been providing regular classes on yoga, Indian classical and contemporary dances, musical instruments like tabla, harmonium, and languages such as Hindi and Sanskrit. It also organizes special lectures on diverse aspects of Indian culture, politics, and society by involving renowned Indian and Korean scholars and academia. Over the years, the Cultural Center has also built an extensive network of partnership with various cultural organizations, city administrations, and provincial governments across the country, intending to broaden the stakeholders and promoting Indian culture in Republic of Korea. Today, I'm extremely delighted to host this international symposium, which focuses on the cultural connect between the three most important countries of the region, that is India, Korea, and Vietnam. We have an excellent panel lined up today with the three ambassadors, that is the Indian ambassador to South Korea. We also have Indian ambassador to Vietnam, and the Vietnamese ambassador to India also joining us here today. And we also have the director of the three cultural centers. I'm here with you in front of you. We have Dr. Harisha, director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at Hanoi. And we also have Mr. Kim, who is the director of the Korean Cultural Center in India. Also, he has also joined us in this session. And two eminent scholars from Korea and Vietnam. They will be sharing their expertise and their experience. They will be sharing about the Indian cultural imprint in their respective countries. So it's a personal pleasure and delight to welcome all the distinguished speakers, scholars, and researchers from different parts of the world to this international symposium. With these words, let me officially request our ambassador, Sri Priya Ranganathan, to formally welcome all the participants. Over to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. Ambassador Pranay Verma, our ambassador of India to Vietnam. Ambassador Pham San Chao, the ambassador of Vietnam to India. Dr. Harisha, director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center in Hanoi. My colleague and friend, Dr. Sonu Trivedi, the director of ICC Seoul. Professor Lee Go-Leong, the president of the Korean Society for Indian Studies. Dr. Nga, the head of the Department of Historical and Cultural Studies of the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences. Korean and Vietnamese friends, students of our cultural center, Indian community in Korea and Vietnam, and all other participants joining from different parts of the world. A very warm welcome to all of you. I'm delighted to be part of this international symposium on Indian cultural imprints in Korea and Vietnam. This is an effort to discover and showcase the cultural connection between three countries in the Indo-Pacific region that have such a strong cultural and historic identity, India, Korea, and Vietnam. I must applaud the Indian cultural centers in Seoul and Hanoi and the directors for coming up with this exciting idea. Every country has its own cultural context, and it is the accommodation, adaptation, and cultural amalgamation that bring any two countries and societies closer to each other. The Indian cultural imprint is very visible in Korea. India and Korea share a very deep and long-lasting cultural legacy. The legendary romance of Princess Suriratna from Ayodhya, who journeyed across the seas to come to Korea to marry King Kim Suro of the Gaya Kingdom and become Queen Her, is very well known here. In fact, several million Gimhae Kims and Incheon Hers trace their ancestry back to this royal couple. The advent of Buddhism in Korea is another ancient yet vibrant thread that continues to link us. In contemporary history, the shared experience of struggle against a foreign colonial power to win freedom and the resonance in our respective national movements is visible in the writings of our great leaders such as Rabindranath Tagore, Mahatma Gandhi, and Jawaharlal Nehru, all of whom voiced their support to the Korean people. At the time of the Korean War in 1950, India responded immediately to the call of the UN for humanitarian support to the friendly people of Korea. And the Indian 60th Parafield Ambulance came to provide medical support to Korean troops from 1950 to 53. In more recent times, the India-Korea relationship has made great strides and has become truly multidimensional. This has been acknowledged by our governments in designating the relationship as a special strategic partnership in 2015. This was in recognition of the significant convergence of interests and the mutual goodwill that exists between us. India and Vietnam too share a very special relationship, but that is a story that I will leave to my friend Ambassador Pranay Verma and to Ambassador Chow to tell us about. This is an unusual and special opportunity for us today as we try not only to draw upon the cultural linkages between India and Korea and India and Vietnam, but also to draw on the deep bonds between Korea and Vietnam. Vietnam plays a central role in the Korean government's new southern policy, especially now that it has assumed the role of leadership in the ASEAN. I think it's striking that Indian, Korean, and Vietnamese culture, be it in music, art, literature, drama, films, architecture, clothing, or cuisine, all offer such a delightful combination of tradition and modernity and are appreciated across the world. What can we do as diplomats, as teachers, as students, as culturally alive people to use these cultural discoveries and explorations to bring our people closer together? I'm sure that our eminent panelists today will discuss these aspects and more and leave us all with much to reflect upon and much more work for us to do from the Cultural Center and from the Embassy. I must express my special gratitude to Professor Lee Yong for joining us today and sharing and agreeing to share his insights. Professor Lee is a noted specialist in Indian philosophy, yoga, and Vedanta, and I would like you all to join me in congratulating him for winning the ICCR Distinguished Indologist Award in 2019. Welcome, Professor Lee. I'm sure that we'll have much to absorb and learn through our conference today about Indian cultural imprints in Korea and Vietnam. This event will undoubtedly help us in further strengthening our cultural ties and the international cooperation between all three countries and people. Thank you all for joining us today. Kamsahamnida, Dhanyavad.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for officially welcoming all the participants. Let me now call upon Ambassador Pranay Verma to give his congratulatory remarks. Ambassador Verma, over to you. Please unmute and please give your address. Meanwhile, let me also introduce Ambassador Verma to all of you. Ambassador Pranay Verma is a career diplomat who joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1994 and has held diplomatic assignments in Hong Kong, San Francisco, Beijing, Kathmandu, and Washington, D.C. He assumed the office of Ambassador of India to Vietnam in July 2019. Before arriving in Hanoi, Ambassador Verma served as the Director General of the East Asia Division at Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi since June 2017. Earlier, he also served as the Director General for External Relations at the Department of Atomic Energy, looking after India's nuclear diplomacy. He has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. Before joining the Indian Foreign Service, he started his professional career at India's steel manufacturing company, Tata Steel. He also holds a master's degree in the Chinese language from Middlebury Institute of International Studies, California. Over to you, Ambassador Verma.
My dear friend, Ambassador Supriya Ranganathan, Ambassador of India in Korea. Very dear friend, Ambassador Famsan Chow. It's good to see you, Ambassador, again. We have been meeting quite regularly online these days, talking about India and Vietnam bilateral relations. My senior colleague, I can see Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia there on the screen. Good afternoon, sir. Professor Lee Yong, President of the Korean Society for Indian Studies in Korea. Dr. Le Thi Hang Nia, Head Department of Historical and Cultural Studies at Vietnam Institute of India and Southwest Asian Studies. my colleague, Dr. G.B. Harisha, Director, Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center in Hanoi. I would join Sri Priya in congratulating the Swami Vivekananda Culture Center in Seoul and in Hanoi in taking this initiative to talk about Indian cultural imprints in Korea and Vietnam. And indeed, you have chosen two countries in this region who have been at the forefront of India's cultural connection in this large Indo-Pacific region. I have had the opportunity of dealing with Korea in my last assignment, and therefore I'm aware with some of that, the magnificence of that cultural engagement through the tales of Princess Suriratna. I remember we were also building a monument for her in Ayodhya, which is still a work in progress, and we hope to have this becoming a major icon of India-Korea cultural interaction. For Vietnam, of course, all I can say is that it has been a discovery every day about Indian cultural imprints in this country. On the face of it, some of the aspects of our cultural engagement with Vietnam are quite obvious in the forms of numerous yoga centers which adorn every city of Vietnam these days. But going beyond that, I think we have had some very, very profound discoveries in Vietnam in the 20th century, which showed how deeply we were connected with Vietnam. And I will talk about our connection through the charm kingdoms in Vietnam. I'm happy to tell you that Government of India is taking up a very robust partnership with Vietnam in cultural heritage of the charm temples in a place called My Son in central Vietnam, where we have had some excellent finds. The latest of which is a monolithic Shiva Linga dating back to 9th century AD, which really shows how deeply we were connected. We have also seen imprints of Ramayana in Vietnam, which is not very well known, in some of the inscriptions and some of the monuments that we have discovered in My Son. The whole charm kingdom actually captures a very glorious era of our cultural engagement with Vietnam and Vietnamese people, much of which is actually today being discovered through our various collaboration projects. The charm kingdoms until 15th century were actually named after Indian kingdoms, Indrapura, Amravati, Vijaya, Kauthara, Panduranga. These were very, very affluent charm kingdoms present in Vietnam, which forged very close links between our two cultures and civilizations. I must also tell you, and I think this is a subject matter for the experts to tell you, but just to tell you some of the things that I have discovered, which has really shown light on our cultural connection, is that the first Sanskrit inscriptions outside India actually, I believe, was found in Vietnam. And those inscriptions are kept in the National Museum of Vietnam. Maybe my colleague Ambassador Pham San Chau can talk more about it. So apart from our charm connection, the Buddhist connection also has a unique and glorious history with Vietnam. And there is a very strong belief and school of evidence that Buddhism in Vietnam actually came directly from India and not rooted through the continental Asia as it happened in most other countries in Southeast Asia and East Asia. So we have evidence of Buddhist masters like Mahajivaka, Kalacharya, Ruchi, Vinita Ruchi, who are believed to have come to Vietnam from India, from southern India, bringing traditions and teachings of Nagarjuna from South India to Vietnam. So there are several unique aspects of our cultural heritage in Vietnam, which I hope our discussions today will try and capture. My colleague, Dr. Harisha, is doing a lot of work on this, and maybe he will talk about some of these aspects. I hope that today's event is a trigger for deeper discussions and exchanges between our cultural scholars, between our three countries, to find out more and more profound aspects of our cultural engagement with this region. So with these words, I wish the deliberations all success and hope that we will be able to see some scholarly outputs, which then helps us in carrying forward our cultural diplomacy, both in Vietnam and in Korea. And with these words, I thank again both our cultural centers for organizing this event. And it's so good to see you all in the middle of our own isolations in our respective places during the COVID pandemic. Good luck and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Verma, for sharing your insights. It was really a delight to hear from you. You elaborated on the India-Vietnam Cultural Connect and also elaborated on the new findings, how the ruins dating back to the 9th century AD, they have been now discovered, and also highlighting about the imprints of Ramayana being discovered in Vietnam. And I'm sure the connection that we have with the Sanskrit language and Buddhism is deep-rooted, and we hope the deliberations today would certainly be carried forward in subsequent other events, and we will try to carry it forward and see on a long-term basis what we can do to carry forward this cultural imprint between the three countries of India, Korea, and Vietnam. I now would like to welcome one of our special guests that we have with us today, Ambassador Chow, who is the Ambassador of Vietnam to India. Ambassador Chow, over to you. Please unmute and speak. But before that, let me also introduce Ambassador Chow to all the participants. His Excellency Pham San Chow is the Ambassador of Socialist Republic of Vietnam to India. Prior to this, he was Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs at Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Vietnam. He was also Special Envoy of the Prime Minister of Vietnam on issues of UNESCO, Vietnam's representative in the Executive Board of UNESCO. He was also Secretary General of Vietnam National Commission for UNESCO and Director General of the Cultural Diplomacy and UNESCO Affairs Department of in the Department of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In 2011, Ambassador Pham San Chow was appointed as the Ambassador of Vietnam to the Kingdom of Belgium, the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, and the European Commission, where he played an instrumental role in negotiations between the European Union and Vietnam to develop the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement and followed the EU-Vietnam Dialogue on Human Rights. He has received numerous state distinctions, including the Grand Cross of the Order of the Crown from Kingdom of Belgium and Ordre des Palmes Academiques from Government of France in recognition of his distinguished career of public service. Excellency, it is a privilege to have you here with us, and we look forward to your special remarks. Over to you, Ambassador Chow.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sonu. Ambassador Sripriya Raghunathan, Ambassador Pranay Verma, Dr. Lee, Dr. Harisha, Dr. Hanga, Dr. Sonu, thank you very much for the opportunity. I feel very privileged and honored to be invited at the very last minute to this very interesting seminar. Before coming to India, I was Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs of Vietnam in charge of culture diplomacy. So I'm very interested in that kind of seminar. Three countries, India, Vietnam, and Korea, are the three emerging countries that attach great importance to soft power and to public culture diplomacy. That's why the topic today is of great interest, not only to me, but to many people who follow the relations between those three countries. I am not here to cover the relationship between India and Vietnam, especially in the field of cultural cooperation and Indian culture imprint in Vietnam, which has been covered very eloquently by Ambassador Verma. I'm here just want to mention, to express our desire to see and listen to all the experts on the Indian imprint in Korea. And most importantly, I want to stress that I want to learn more on how to promote the people-to-people contact between India and Vietnam, which is one of the 5 pillars of the comprehensive strategic partnership between India and Vietnam. But I also want to bring one information to you, namely the relationship between Korea and Vietnam. It was not until in 1992, Vietnam and Republic of Korea normalized its relationship. So that relationship is less than 20 years, and at the moment it has grown tremendously well. And the cultural side of that relationship is that at the moment we have nearly 4 million Korean visitors to Vietnam, only number 2 after Chinese visitors, and we have 300,000 Korean business people working in Vietnam. And what is more interestingly, we have the same amount of Vietnamese brides married to Korean husband in Korea. And in that on that link, Vietnam and Korea are very close in the sense that we feel that we are in the same family. Contrast to that, we have a very long-standing relationship between Vietnam and India. That relationship dated back 2,000 years ago, when Buddhism started spreading from India to Vietnam. And since then, the relationship of Vietnam and India has never been, has always been excellent. So why my participation here today is try to find the answer why the relationship between Korea and Vietnam, which is still new, but we have so many people-to-people contact movement, whereas the people-to-people contact movement between India and Vietnam is not up to the level that the 2 countries expected. Therefore, I also want to learn more about people-to-people contact between India and Korea and what we can learn. But in conclusion, I believe that this is a very interesting seminar that will leave to that will leave a lot of answers to the unreplied questions, including mine. And what is important, I believe that the cultural linkages, the historical connect between our 3 countries will promote the relation between those 3 countries, because we have a similar situation. When India have a princess in Korea, we also have the descendant of the Lee dynasty in Korea. When Indian have yoga, Buddhism in the Republic of Korea, we also inherited that from India. Having said that, I am very much eager to listening to the presentation by all the academia, and I wish a very successful deliberation of the seminar. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Ambassador Chow. It was really a delight to hear from you, and you rightly focused on the deep historical and cultural connections that we have between India, Vietnam, and also between Korea and Vietnam, which you highlighted, and especially in the modern times when we have the families marrying to each other between the 2 countries. So that speaks volume about the relationship between the 2 countries. With these words, let me now move forward to the second section of our symposium, in which we have a special address by Dr. Lee Thi Hang Na. She will speak on the Indian cultural imprints in Vietnam. Over to you, Dr. Na. Please unmute yourself and please speak. And before that, let me also introduce Dr. Na to all the participants. Dr. Lee Thi Hang Na is the head of the Department of Historical and Cultural Studies, Institute for Indian and Southwest Asian Studies, Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences. Before 2011, she was a lecturer at the Faculty of Oriental Studies, University of Social Sciences and Humanities at Ho Chi Minh City National University. She completed her graduation and Masters of Art in Modern Indian History from Miranda House, University of Delhi in 2005 and PhD in 2015. Her research interests include modern Indian history, history of international relations and foreign policies, particularly foreign policy and relations of India, Vietnam, and the United States. She has also been member of various state and ministry level research projects and contributed to the publication of around three books, and she has co-edited 1 book, and she's also author of various articles being published in academic journals of Vietnam and India. She has been instrumental in organizing various international conferences on India and India-Vietnam relations, and she has also taken part in numerous international conferences abroad, including conferences in various countries like Thailand, Australia, India, Philippines, Germany, and several other countries. She's also a member of Asian Network of South Asian Studies initiated by Japan. Over to you, Dr. Na. We are extremely delighted to have you here, and we look forward to your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sonu, for your very kind introduction. Yes. First, respected to Dr. Sonu Trivedi, Ambassador Pranay Verma, Ambassador of India to Vietnam, Ambassador of Vietnam to India, Phạm Sang Châu, Dr. G.B. Harisha, Ambassador Sripriya Ranganathan, I hope I pronounce your name properly, Ambassador of India to Korea, Professor Lee Gyong from Korea. I'm also extremely delighted to see old acquaintance like Ambassador Rajiv Bashir, Professor Kim, the Director of Institute of Indian Study in Korea, and distinguished participants from Korea, India, and Vietnam. First of all, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the organizer of this international visual conference, Dr. Sonu Trivedi and Dr. G.B. Harisha, the dynamic directors of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Centers in Seoul and Hanoi, for inviting me to this visual conference. It is my privilege to be part of this important event. I must also express my gratefulness to my respected co-panelist, Professor Lee Gyong from Korea, for giving me the first chance to speak before you all. I'm also grateful for the insightful speeches made by Ambassador Sripriya and Ambassador Pranay Verma that have provided important input to our understanding of Indian cultural imprints in Korea and Vietnam. I'm also thankful to the new ideas put forward by Ambassador Phạm Sang Châu regarding the relationship between Vietnam, India, and Vietnam, Korea. Distinguished more than 2,000 years of history, as has been mentioned by our ambassadors. I would like to use the Dr. Harisha's word, that is, the task is similar to putting an elephant into a cup. It's like that. However, in my presentation, I will try to present an overview of the Indian cultural imprint in Vietnam. I would like to tell the story of how the first imprint of Indian culture was introduced in Vietnam and how it was blended and intermingled with the Vietnamese culture. Newsletter published by You Monthly, which helps to get the most updated and most official information about India's new developments and India-Vietnam relations. Indian Foreign Minister Mr. Jai Shankar commented that this new discovery is a great cultural example of India's development partnership and reaffirmed the civilizational connect between India and Vietnam. And I believe that there are still many more Indian cultural imprints lying deep under the ground in Vietnam that are yet to be explored. India is a country with one of the most flourishing cultures of human civilization. So, throughout history, Indian culture has not only absorbed outside influences, but has also spread outward in every direction. The Southeast Asia is one of the areas most strongly affected by Indian culture. The spread of Indian culture to Vietnam is part of the larger story of India's cultural influence in Southeast Asian region, which is one of the most fascinating stories in human history. And this exchange has left indelible marks in almost every aspect of the life of many countries in Southeast Asia, including Malaysia, Indonesia, Myanmar, Thailand, and of course, Vietnam. The strong imprints of Indian culture in the region continue to be found in the language and culture, religion and philosophy, art and architecture, customs and practices of this country. A Malaysian scholar, namely Farish Noor, wrote The development of Southeast Asian civilization goes hand in hand with the development of Indian civilization. The scholar in India and elsewhere know about the Ayutthaya kingdom of Siam in Thailand, the great Borobudur temple in Indonesia, wide Indian influence in Java, Sumatra, and Bali, Indonesia, and Angkor Wat in Cambodia. But it is less well known that the first Hindu kingdom outside India were established in the region that is now the territory of Vietnam. Few people know that the first imprint of Hinduism or Indian culture were also found in Mỹ Sơn, Da Nang, and Võ Cạnh, Nha Trang. And I'm very delighted to hear that Ambassador Pranay Verma also pointed out that one Sanskrit was found first in Vietnam. So a few people know that the first imprints of Hinduism or Indian culture were also found in Mỹ Sơn, Da Nang, and Võ Cạnh, Nha Trang of Vietnam. When the Indian President Ram Nath Kovind visited Vietnam in 2018, he began his journey from Da Nang, where the World Heritage Site of Mỹ Sơn falls. And this has a very important symbolic meaning. In the words of President Ram Nath Kovind, this temple complex is a reminder of the unique culture that developed on the coast of present-day Vietnam thousands of years ago, a culture that drew from the spiritual depth of Hinduism in India. It was truly remarkable to see the Shiva Linga and the many sculptures of Shiva adorning this ancient temple complex built by the Chamba kings. So thus, Indian culture was introduced to Vietnam very early in history, and the prolonged cultural interaction between India and Vietnam has blended the two cultures and made it inseparable. It is now very difficult for us to separate which aspect is Indian culture and which aspect is Vietnam's indigenous culture. So both culture has intermingled and became inseparable in the overall Vietnamese national culture. So the story begins that the earliest contact between India and Vietnam is related to Buddhism. Recent research has shown that Indian Buddhism was introduced to Vietnam directly by the sea in the 2nd and 3rd century BC during the time of Emperor Ashoka. Earlier, it was often popularized the idea that Indian Buddhism came from China, but in fact, the recent research has shown that Indian Buddhism was introduced to Vietnam directly by the sea in the 2nd and 3rd century BC during the time of Emperor Ashoka. Buddhism was first introduced to Do Sơn area, Hải Phòng city in northern Vietnam during the Hùng Kinh dynasty, the first dynasty of Vietnam. So during this time, so from Do Sơn, Hải Phòng, there were many ways to get to other trading centers in northern Vietnam, such as Luy Lâu, Kẻ Chợ, and Phổ Hiến. And Buddhism was introduced to this trading center. Among these places, Luy Lâu in Bắc Ninh province became the famous Buddhist center in Vietnam. From Luy Lâu, Buddhism made its way to China. And the affirmation of the direct introduction of Buddhism into Vietnam before it spread to China is important, not only in terms of chronology, but more importantly, because it means that the Buddhism that came to Vietnam was original Buddhism and not diffused by Chinese Buddhism. In the 6th century, Virutarusi, a Jain Buddhist monk, came to Giao Châu, which is Bắc Ninh in northern Vietnam nowadays, and formed the first Jain Buddhist school in Vietnam, known as Virutarusi Jain School. Virutarusi Jain School was mainly influenced by Indian Buddhism, not much influenced by the Chinese Buddhism. This school was transmitted in 19th generation and was lost in the 13th century. In the beginning of the 11th century, another Jain monk, namely Sung Fa, belonged to the 11th generation of Virutarusi Jain School, went to India to study about Buddhism for 9 years. When he returned, he opened school in Phat Văn Pagoda, which is also in Bắc Ninh province. Large number of disciples follow him, including Đạo Hạnh, which is a famous monk known for his esoteric Buddhism. Sung Phat helped in promoting and strengthening Buddhism in Vietnam. And the King Lê Đại Hành during the Lê dynasty in Vietnam sought his advice many times. Apart from Sung Phat, some other Indian tantric monks also came to Vietnam later on, such as Yogi Praman in the 13th century, Buddhists in the 14th century, and all were warmly welcomed by the Chen dynasty in Vietnam. So the Chen dynasty was the time when the Buddhist was found strong development in Vietnam. Today, a large number of Vietnamese Buddhist monks and nuns go to India to study Buddhism, strengthening the Buddhist link between India and Vietnam. In 2016, during the short visit to Hanoi by Prime Minister Modi, although his very tight schedule, he took time to visit Quán Sư Pagoda, reminding the story of more than 2,000 years of Buddhist linkages between India and Vietnam. And when the Vietnamese President Trần Đại Quang visited India in March 2018, he began his Indian trip by visiting Bodh Gaya Temple, the holy place of Buddhism in India. And this gesture confirms the importance of Buddhist influence in the mind of the Vietnamese people. Hinduism came to Vietnam a little later, in around the 1st century AD. Archaeological evidence also shows the influence of Hinduism in Funan, Ốc Eo, and Champa culture. Funan and Champa was the first Hindu kingdom in Vietnam that were established in the 1st century AD. And today, the Mission Heritage Site is the living proof of the Hindu connection between India and Vietnam. And Hinduism came and coexisted with other religions, such as Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. And more recently, during the French colonial period in the late 19th and early 20th century, several Hindu temples were built in Saigon, which is present-day Ho Chi Minh City, to serve as places of worship and communities activities for the Indian diaspora when they came to the city. So the story of India-Vietnam cultural interaction began in history and continued to be told in modern time. The remarkable proof of the modern imprint of Indian culture in Vietnam is the existence and functioning of the Hindu temple in Ho Chi Minh City. Today, when you visit Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, you can still see the 3 vibrant Hindu temples, namely Sri Tendai Yuthapani, Subramanian Swami, and Mariamman temples. In the beginning, these temples were meant for Indians only, to serve as places of worship as well as public places of meeting and get together with the Indian community. With the passage of time, the temples became places of cultural convergence between a culturally and religiously rich Indian community and a luxurious urban city of Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City. After Vietnam and India gained independence, the foundation of our bilateral relationship was laid by the great leaders of the 2 countries, namely President Ho Chi Minh and Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. The 2 leaders met each other for the first time in 1927 at the meeting of the Anti-Imperialist Alliance in Brussels, Belgium. After the victory of Vietnam against the French colonialism at Dien Phu in 1954, Prime Minister Nehru was the first foreign leader to visit Vietnam. During the prolonged struggle for independence, Vietnam always received the spiritual and material support of Indian friends. And in modern time, we also have a connection between the great people of India and Vietnam. The people and people contact between India and Vietnam have also been continued throughout the modern period. Like Rabindranath Tagore also visited Vietnam, Saigon in 1929. And also the connection between Ho Chi Minh and Mahatma Gandhi has also been recently studied. Today, the Vietnam's strategy of cultural diplomacy through 2020 and India's strategy of promoting its soft power are the prerequisites for the two countries to promote cultural cooperation. And today, various institutions in Vietnam have been created to promote Indian studies and Indian culture in Vietnam. At first, we have the Institute for Indian and Southwest Asian Studies, which focus on Indian study, and we have disseminated Indian culture and Indian information among the Vietnamese populace. Apart from the Institute for Indian and Southwest Asian Study, in Vietnam, we also have various departments of Indian study at Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City National University, also the Center for Indian Study at Ho Chi Minh Academy of Politics. All of us have worked hard to promote understanding of Indian culture in Vietnam. And on the Indian side, the establishment of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center in Hanoi has helped immensely to introduce to the Vietnamese the vibrant culture of Indian, like Indian dance, yoga, film art, etc. have become very popular in Vietnam over the past few years. So I think this modern story of Indian-Vietnam cultural interaction is quite popular in our daily media, and I may not need to mention here. So today, cultural cooperation is an important pillar of India-Vietnam comprehensive strategic partnership, along with the political and economic pillars. And in order to further promote India-Vietnam cultural cooperation, I would like to recommend some ideas. Firstly, I think Vietnam and India should find an effective ways to turn the strong cultural connect between the two countries for economic gains. And the question mark put by our ambassador Phạm Sang Châu is a very urgent question mark that we have to seriously think and answer. It is said that the two countries have had, we agree that we have very good political relation, but our economic partnership does not grow adequately. So the two sides have to make sure that cultural barriers and misunderstanding do not lead to collision during business transaction between India and Vietnam. We have to answer the question why India and Vietnam have had cultural interaction since early in history, but we cannot turn this deep cultural connect into business gain. Why cannot we create a kind of Indian wave, Indian cultural wave, like our friends Korea have been able to do in Vietnam? So perhaps one of the solutions is to further enhance the right understanding of the true cultural connection between India and Vietnam. I think we still have to do much in order to promote the right understanding, because I think Indian culture is still much misunderstood by many people. So we have to, it is our responsibility to promote the right understanding of the true culture of India. The economic relation is sure to grow faster if more effort is made to understand each other's culture. Culture is a foundation for economic development. It gives strength and motivation to economic development. In order to be successful in doing business with partners of other countries, it is important for businessmen to develop high sensitivity to cultural factors, identify and pursue a culturally responsive strategy most appropriate in a given negotiation setting. So at the government level, the two sides should also pay more attention to the promotion of Indian studies in Vietnam and Vietnamese studies in India by approving research projects on India-Vietnam in each country. And also the research institution and university of the two countries should take the initiative in strengthening research and program and organizing academic conferences to promote mutual understanding. Direct flights have been operated which is a great achievement of our partnership. But in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, the two sides should increase advertise each other's culture through media such as TV, website, online activities. More right Indian film should be selected to show in Vietnam to help Vietnamese audience have a better understanding of Indian culture. And Vietnam should also select good Vietnamese movie to show in India. So the last but not the least, trilateral cooperation between the institution of India, Korea, and Vietnam should be enhanced. Yeah, I would like to congratulate Dr. Sonu for this very wonderful initiative to have a webinar among the three countries. To tell you the truth, I was a bit upset when Dr. Sonu left the Center for Vietnam Study to take the charge of the ICC Seoul. I thought it is again for India-Korea relations, a loss for India-Vietnam relations. However, today I'm very happy that in her new position, she has helped to widen the scope of our collaboration and expanded our network. So it is no longer a loss, but again for all India, Korea, and Vietnam. So I think the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Hanoi, Seoul Center for Vietnam Study, New Delhi, and the Institute for Indian and Southwest Asian Study at last should take this collaboration forward in the future. So I think I have taken much of your time. I would like to conclude my presentation by saying that India and Vietnam had contact very early in history, which led to the deep root of their cultural religious interaction. Through contact, Vietnamese local culture is attracted by the rich culture of the Indians. As pointed out by leaders and scholars of both sides, Indian culture came to Vietnam by way of peace. Therefore, it could easily be implanted in the heart of the Vietnamese people. The intermingling of Indian and Vietnamese communities inevitably led to the transformation and adaptation of both cultures. This interaction has not led to the disappearance of one culture, but has created unique features for both sides. Both the cultures have been enriched and renewed. And before I leave, please give me 1 or 2 minutes to introduce to you some pictures of Indian cultural imprints in Vietnam. So I would like to share my PowerPoint presentation. Dr. Sonu. Yeah, you see. So in Vietnam now, the Indian imprints can be found in all 3 regions of Vietnam. This is the Dâu Pagoda in Bắc Ninh province in North Vietnam, in northern Vietnam. So this is the Dâu Pagoda in Bắc Ninh province in northern Vietnam. And this is the Indian imprint in central Vietnam, the newly discovered sandstone Linga Yoni of the 9th century at Mỹ Sơn. So also this is the Indian imprint in central Vietnam, the Mỹ Sơn heritage site, which is very well known now. So this is the Punaga Tower in Nha Trang. We have many kind of this temple, this tower, this Champa temple in central and southern Vietnam. So this is also again Punaga Tower in Nha Trang. So this is the Indian imprints in southern part of Vietnam. This is the Mariamman temple in Ho Chi Minh City, which is very popular among the Vietnamese communities in Ho Chi Minh City. Nowadays, many Vietnamese come to this temple to pray on the 1st and the 15th days of the lunar calendar. So it is considered very sacred and holy temple in Ho Chi Minh City. This is the picture in Ho Chi Minh City. This is the Subramanian Swamy temple in Ho Chi Minh City. And this is the modern story of Vietnam India cultural connection. Prime Minister Modi visited Quán Sứ Pagoda in 2016. Then late President Trần Đại Quang visited Bodh Gaya in March 2018. And then President Ram Nath Kovind visited Mỹ Sơn in November 2018. So we can see that the Indian imprint is found in all the 3 parts of Vietnam, in north, in central, and in southern of Vietnam. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for listening, for the patience in listening to me, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Na, for that comprehensive presentation, and in fact, in a very elaborate manner, talking about the deep cultural and historical connection that we have between the 2 countries. And yes, you rightly focus that we have to understand the cultural gap between the 2 countries. And yes, indeed, we as cultural centers, both at Seoul and Hanoi, this is a major task in front of us, that we have to bridge the gap, the cultural gap that we have between these countries. And yes, we also agree that trilateral cooperation maybe and collaborative projects and collaborative events between institutions of these countries can help a lot in achieving this particular objective. With these words, let me move forward to another scholar, Professor Lee Yong from Republic of Korea. Let me also introduce Professor Lee to all. Professor Lee is Professor and Dean of Graduate School of Integrative Medicine, Sun Moon University at Seoul. He's also the President of Korean Society for Indian Studies, and recently he has been awarded as the ICCR Distinguished Indologist Award. He specializes in Indian philosophy, yoga, and Vedanta. He majored in Indian philosophy from Dongguk University, Seoul, and he has done his MPhil from University of Madras, and his PhD is from University of Delhi, which was completed in 1995. Professor Lee has written extensively on Indian philosophy, yoga, and Vedanta, and he has participated in various national and international conferences in India, Republic of Korea, and also in several other countries. He's also principal of Korea Yoga Academy, Lee Ashram, established by him in 2006. Professor, it is an honor to have you here, and we look forward to your special address. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sonu. It's true that COVID-19 incident that's been going on for the last few months has made our lives uncomfortable and even also stuffy. But it also creates a good opportunity for us to have this kind of video conference. Above all, I'm very honored and grateful to attend this conference with respected ambassadors and distinguished scholars. Ambassador Sri Priya Ranganathan to Korea, I'm very sorry to greet you in video. How are you? And also Ambassador Pranay Verma. I don't know if it is exact pronunciation or not. Above all, I would like to express my deep gratitude to Dr. Sonu, Director of Vivekananda Cultural Center in Seoul, for inviting me to this conference. I would like to use PPT for my presentation from now on. This afternoon, I would like to talk about Indian cultural imprints in Korea. Though South Korea and India established the consular relations in 1962 and upgraded to ambassador level in ties in 1973, the cultural connection shared by the two countries is much older. In the earlier 20th century, Indian noble laureate Rabindranath Tagore wrote but a few lines that reached the masses and generations and marked the beginning of a long-standing association between South Korea and India. In the golden age of Asia, Korea was one of its lamp bearers, and that lamp is waiting to be lighted once again for the illumination of the East. This lines was written by Rabindranath Tagore in 1929 during his stay in Tokyo. Korea has a history of more than 5,000 years and continues to have her own unique and culture and ideas throughout history. Nevertheless, since BC, Korea has continued to engage in cultural exchanges with the outside world, and the two representative countries are China and India. Since ancient times, Korea has been bordered by China, so cultural exchanges between the two countries have been natural and direct. Especially, Chinese characters and Confucian ideas had a great influence on Korean thought and ethics. In comparison, it seems that cultural interaction between India and Korea through sea route was relatively difficult because India is far from Korea and does not directly lead to land. While China's influence on Korea throughout history can be seen as largely political and Confucian-based ethical aspect. namely external. Indian culture and ideas have had a profound impact on the formation of Korean people's inner way of thinking. A case in point is the influence of Buddhism on Korean culture and ideas. As we know, Buddhism originated in the northern part of the Ganga River in the 6th century BC by Gautama Buddha, and according to the Samguk Sagi, a historical record of three kingdoms of ancient Korea, Buddhism came to Korea in the late 4th century via China. In this regard, it can be said that Buddhism was an exotic religion for Koreans. Nevertheless, Koreans today think that Buddhism is not just an exotic religion, but a foundation of their own culture and ideas. This can be inferred from the fact that the names of the Buddhist temples, for instance, Tongdosa Temple and Bongwonsa Temple, are still used in the name of KTX station or Seoul Subway station. In terms of the number of believers, the mainstream religion in Korea today is Christianity. Nevertheless, no church name is used as the name of railway station or subway station. If Korean peoples do not recognize Buddhism as their own culture, it will be impossible for the Buddhist temple name to be used as a public station name. In this regard, Buddhism has already been accepted as a part of Korean culture rather than as a cultural imprint of India left in Korea. The influence of Tamil on Korean language was as great as Buddhism. It is true that many words in Korean language come from Chinese words and have Chinese meanings. It is said that about 60% of Korean words came from Chinese. Even Korean people's name usually has Chinese meaning and can be written in Chinese. For example, in my case, both first and last names can be written in both Korean and Chinese characters, and they are understood in the meaning of Chinese characters. In fact, my name is, it is not easy to pronounce my name exactly in Korean. Lee is my family name. Means Chinese, this is Chinese character, this is Korean, and it is English, and it means plum tree, and go. Usually they pronounce zo, but it is go. This is Chinese, and this means huge, big, huge. And the last, Yong. This is Chinese, Korean, and dragon. So my name has Chinese meaning, huge dragon, Mahanaga. However, not only is the Korean language completely different from Chinese in the structure of the sentences, but there are also a number of Korean words that cannot be traced in Chinese, which seems to be related to Indian languages, especially Tamil. Many scholars have already pointed out the similarities between Korean and Tamil. In particular, the spoken language used in everyday life of Korean people is very closely related to Tamil language. About 700 to 800 Korean words are almost similar to Tamil in meaning as well as pronunciation, as the same. Locally, there are strong imprints of Indian culture in the southern part of Korea, especially in the area of ancient Gaya kingdom. The name of kingdom Gaya itself is said to be a trace of Indian culture, which probably came from Bodh Gaya, the holy place where Gautama Buddha attained enlightenment. Meanwhile, some historians say the name Gaya originated from the Tamil word Gaya, which means fish. In fact, the names of some temples and mountains in southern part of Korea often include a Chinese character, O. Of course, pronunciation is totally different from Chinese, but same meaning and same character, O, meaning a fish. in their names, which is, I think, a trace of fish worship that flourished in the ancient Tamil kingdom, especially in Pandya dynasty. For example, the most famous and popular Buddhist temple name in Busan, the second city of Korea, is Burmasa, which means Brahma Matsya temple, Brahma fish temple. In addition, there are temples in Gimhae, once the capital of the Gimhae kingdom, Gaya kingdom, that have fish-related names such as Shinosa, Divine Fish Temple, and Manasa, 10,000 Fish Temple. Shinosan, Divine Fish Mountain, the backbone of Gimhae, also has a fish-related meaning in its name. Perhaps the most important and significant imprint of Indian culture remaining in Korea is the descendant of Indian Princess Her. Somebody said that her name is Sri Ratna. I don't know how can I understand the name Sri Ratna. I think it is appeared in one novel written by Empress of India to Korea. Princess Her, a queen mentioned in the Samgukyosa, a 13th century Korean chronicle. According to the Samgukyosa, she became the wife of King Suro of Gaya Kingdom at the age of 16, after having arrived by ship from Ayutthaya Kingdom. It is said that there are more than 7 million present-day Koreans who trace their lineage to the Queen Her. A stone powder named Pasasaktab, traditionally held to have been brought to Gaya Kingdom on her ship, is located near her grave. The Samgukyosa reports that the powder was carried on her ship in order to calm the god of ocean and allow the ship to pass. The unusual and rough form of this powder, unlike any other in Korea, may lend some credence to the account. I'll show you some photo. This is a royal tomb of King Suro's wife, Princess Her, Queen Her's tomb. And this is a tombstone in front of her, as in front of her tomb. It reads that it is written in Chinese. Garakuk, Gaya Kingdom, Suro's wife, Boju Teo. We don't know exactly the name of the meaning of Boju. Boju and Boju Tehu, her she, tomb. And pavilion where the Pasa stone powder is enshrined. I also written some academic articles on this Pasa stone powder. This is, according to Samgukyosa, this stone powder is from India by Princess Her. So now only 6 pieces are remain. And the stone of Pasa stone powder. Few months ago, a research team of Korea University conducted a thorough analysis of the ingredient of stones, which turned out to be a sandstone containing a large amount of pyrophyllite not found in Korea. So I think there are so many Indian scholars here. So if you can identify this stone in India, then it will be very helpful for us to identify where this stone came to Gaya Kingdom. This powder was on display at the special exhibition of National Museum of Korea for 3 months, from December last year to February this year. So for 3 months, it was exhibited in the National Museum of Korea. Lastly, I would like to show you a relief panel depicting the Muchilinda Buddha, which is one of the most evident cultural imprints in Korea. This relief fragment was excavated from the site of Myeongwolsa Temple which is believed to have been a temple in ancient Gaya kingdom. According to Professor Dr. Lokesh Chandra, the former chairman of ICCL, once Korean journalist Lee Jong-gi met Dr. Lokesh Chandra in Delhi, and that time he showed this photo and living to Lokesh Chandra, and he said that it is maybe it is from India in ancient time. So according to Professor Dr. Lokesh Chandra, the former chairman of ICCL, the relief sculpture of Myeongwalsa temple site depicts an episode of Buddha's life. When the Buddha was in meditation after enlightenment, a Naga named Muchilinda came to protect him from a heavy rainstorm by covering him with its body and hood. Dr. Lokesh Chandra also said that the relief sculpture of Myeongwalsa temple was a clear proof of cultural contact between ancient India and Korea. Next week, we will have a conference on Gaya Buddhism, and I will present a paper on this matter, Myeongwalsa temple, Muchilanda Buddha. This. One notable fact in this relief sculpture is that the Naga depicted on the left and right sides of Buddha was expressed as a snake, not a dragon, which means it was transmitted directly to Korea without going through China. As is widely known, when Naga of Indian culture was transmitted to China, it was usually transformed into a dragon. In fact, in the history of Korean Buddhist arts, Myeongwalsa Nagaraja relief is the only one in which Buddha was depicted with snake, not dragon. I don't have much time, so I will wrap up my presentation here. Through this video symposium today, I hope that cultural exchanges between India and Korea, India and Vietnam and Korea will become more active in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lee, for your very comprehensive presentation and giving us an in-depth view about the deep historical and cultural linkages that we have between India and the Republic of Korea. And very nicely you have highlighted the historical aspects, and also how the southern part of Korea, we see more Indian imprint there, and also the story of Princess Ho in Korea. So I'm sure your presentation must have created much many queries among the various participants. So with this, we will now open the house for discussion, and would request the participants, if they want to have, if they want to make any comment, any observation, they can just raise their hand below, near your screen. At the bottom of your screen, there is an option of raising the hand. Anyone who would like to speak, give any observation, or if there is any question, you may kindly raise your hand. We will request you to unmute and then speak. Yes,
my question is to Professor Lee, who spoke about India and Korea's cultural and other linkages. He talked about the connection of Buddhism between India and Korea. Earlier speaker also pointed out there were connections between India and Vietnam, not just of Buddhism, but some other religions or the branches of Hinduism, for example, Jainism. So is there a similar case with Korea also, that they have linked with other religions like Jainism or some other?
Thank you, Mr. Manzar. Meanwhile, I would request Professor Lee. Professor Lee, if you can respond to the previous question. Dr. Na has left. She had to go somewhere for an important assignment. So Professor Lee, if you can respond to the previous question, please unmute and please respond.
Once Professor S.R. Bhatt, my respected professor of Delhi University, said that before Buddhism came to Korea, maybe some other Indian religion should be there. For example, Shaivism was there before Buddhism. I also think that maybe before Buddhism came to Korea, maybe some Indian Hindu religion like Shaivism, most probably Shaivism was there first, and then Buddhism come to Korean Peninsula in maybe 2nd or 3rd century. But I'm not sure because we don't have much materials, tangible materials to prove this kind of relationship and interaction between Indian Buddhism or Indian religion and Korean, indigenous Korean religion.
Okay, thank you, Professor Lee. The question from Pinkuja is there in the chat box. His question is this: do you really think in the world of economic globalization, the cultural links could be strengthened? Where the people do not value religious foundations, is it possible to revive that declining importance of religion in comparison to economic and technological aspects? And I think to answer this, may I request Dr. Harisha? Dr. Harisha, if you can respond to this.
Yeah, so good afternoon and good evening to everyone in India, in Vietnam, and Korea and India. And it is a wonderful seminar. I will give my concluding remarks later. But to give an answer to Pinku Jhaji's question, the way religion is understood in the European context and Indian context, or in the Asian context, is different. Basically, here it forms everything, means it is the foundation for everything. Like that is the meaning of dharma or dhamma in Buddhism. It means dharanas ityahu iti dharma, means that which gives foundation for everything. That means it is ecological, it is economical, it is social, it is religious, it is ritualistic, it is tribal, it is animistic, it is urban, it is rural, it is gender, agender. Everything. It is vertical, it is horizontal in the structure. Therefore, it has to be understood in the holistic sense. And due to the colonization effects, we have reduced the very definition of religion into some rituals, going to a mosque or to a church or to a temple or to a pagoda. No, that may be one part. But actual part is that how harmoniously we live with everyone. How do we respect others' values, other space, what you call other space. That is always considered in the Asian religions. Therefore, Radhakrishnan, President of India, the second President of India, who was a diplomat also, he told that West has religion and East has traditions. He has written a book that Western religions and Eastern traditions. That means we say in Sanskrit or Hindi a sampradaya, means there is one coming from the ancestors. Therefore, it has to be understood in that way. For example, giving a direct answer to this question from the context of Vietnam, though it is like a religion-neutral country, the state has told that they don't have any opinion on religion and they are like neutral, I mean, neutral to the religious issue. But however, the question of morality, however, the question of ethics, the question of bonding between the people to people, that is very strong in Vietnam. The reason is respect for different ethnic communities, respect for the ethnic minorities, respect for the gender issue. These things are taken. Therefore, my submission to the August gathering is, we have to revisit the very concept of religion itself in the context of India, Korea and Vietnam. It is not like I am just going to a pagoda, therefore I am religious. I am not going to a pagoda, therefore I am an atheist. That is all European framework. That won't happen. For example, in Indian context, Jains, they won't believe in God. But we can't tell them that they are not religious people. It applies to the Buddhist also. In the way Hinduism thinks about God, Buddhism has no concept of God. But Buddhism very much believes in mythology. Then how it is possible that without religion you have mythology? So means these are some of the kinds of entanglements which are posed by the 300 years of European scholarship on the Eastern countries. So they have created certain categories, and every time we are trying to put our content, bucketize our content into those already existing brackets or the buckets, which is not so practical, and both theoretically and philosophical and also practically. For example, Kalidas Nag used to say that there is an Asianism, Asian culture. And Rabindranath Tagore told them that Asia has its own wisdom. That means I'm talking from those parts. Therefore, the question of the space of religion getting less and less as the economic and social questions are coming in the front, it has to be revisited. And second question related to Jainism. Jainism, as we know, not much compared to Buddhism, it was eager to go out of Bharat, out of India. Because the way the Jain theories and Jain philosophy and practice is formed, it is both a strength to it and also it is a kind of geographical limitation to it. Means I'm not using the word limitation in the negative sense. It is like Swayam Nirbandh. Means it is self-imposed restriction. It's not by any external agencies. For example, their attitude towards food, or their vow to have food before the sunset, or for example, the Digambara tradition. They after one stage, the Jain monk in one particular sect in Jainism, there are 2-3 different sects. One is the Shwetambar tradition and another is the Digambara tradition. The white clad tradition and the sky clad tradition, which is known as in English, they won't wear any cloth on their body. So how that will be accepted in other cultures with different cultural mindsets and backgrounds? Therefore, they never took interest to go similar to the Buddhist monks and the Hindu monks. So therefore, the influence of Jainism in the context of Vietnam, I'm here from 2 years and I'm collecting a lot of material. It is not found. However, in Jainism, the 23rd master is known as Parshvanatha, and Parshvanatha will have a hood on the back of his body. On the head, there will be a serpent hood. That hood kind of a structure of statue related to Buddha or Phat is available in Vietnam. We need to study more that is there any possibility of spread of Jainism through these things, but it is an open question. But now it is known as Buddha Naga, Buddha in the form of Naga or a serpent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harisha. We will just take one last observation. Shekhar Sinha ji. Shekhar Sinha ji, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sonuji, and for inviting me to this. And thank you, Indian Ambassador to Seoul. It's been a great learning through. I'm not an expert on any, I'm a retired naval officer. But there's one common theme I observe when I visit any part of Asia, be it China, be it Vietnam, be it South Korea, Japan, Taiwan. There is a cultural similarity in the sense that the manner in which they practice their religion, the manner in which they behave every day, for example, the warmth for a guest, taking care of a guest, taking care of elderly, keeping them at home, and so we have a similar philosophical connect. These are the philosophy of culture which connects all of us, and it is so different from Europe or so different from North America or South America. And this is exactly what is keeping us bound. Though I don't firmly believe that religion is only an expression. It is an expression of the philosophy of the daily life that you follow. And there we have many things in common. And therefore, when you say that in the excavation so-and-so thing has been found, which matches with so-and-so thing in so-and-so country, I'm not surprised. Because the flow of philosophy of life was very similar in this part of Asia. You take India, you take Indian subcontinent and the neighboring Southeast Asia and the East Asia. Their gestures are very similar. You may not understand the language, but you can still communicate. Of course, I think our Vietnamese ambassador to India may have left. We meet him so often. And he's talking in his own language, but we still, by his body language, we can understand that. So I think the entire cultural heritage that we are talking about, it flows on same theme of philosophy of life. And then you see that these are all the manifestations of that, similar philosophy of life, which flows through most of the East Asia and the the Indian Peninsula and all the neighboring countries, right up to, Japan and Taipei and a little bit also in the Philippines and down up to Indonesia. So I'm just giving it a little bit different, why the themes are very similar. Why is it that so-and-so religion similar to this, not similar? But they are only manifestations. But the basic philosophy of life is, in my sense, is probably by and large similar, which is an Asian philosophy of living. Thank you.
Thank you, Shekhar Sinha ji. With this, I think we will try to wrap up, and I would now like to request formally Dr. G.B. Harisha to give a concluding remarks. But before that, though he has already spoken, but let me also introduce him to all the participants here. Dr. G.B. Harisha, he's a writer, full-time researcher and author, editor, translator of more than 75 books on Hindu culture, philosophy, art and literature. He is recipient of Maharshi Badrinarayan Vyas Samman President Awardee 2018. He also received Best Book Award for Dr. Ananda Kumaraswamy in Biography section by Karnataka Sahitya Academy. Dr. Harisha is the founder president of Veer Savarkar Sahitya Sangh, Karnataka, and currently posted as the director of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Hanoi. Over to you, Dr. Harisha, for giving a concluding remarks.
Thank you. Om Tat Sat. Thank you, Dr. Sonu-ji, and all the respected guests and all His Excellency ambassadors of India to Vietnam, Vietnam to India, and from India to Korea. And I really congratulate Dr. Sonu-ji for organizing such a wonderful seminar and giving Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Hanoi, an opportunity to collaborate. So these were the ancient connections which are reconnected now. So because India, if you read Indian folklore or Indian mythology or Indian epics, always the element of travel, the element of prayan, it is always there. If you take the story of Mahabharata, all the important characters, they will be keep on moving. Krishna, he was born somewhere, he was grown up in another place, and he moved to the other banks of the country, other side of the Indian nation, towards the second half of his life. The Pandavas, the heroes of the Mahabharata, they were born and little bit brought up in the Himalayan region. They came to the today's Hastinavati, and again they found a new capital, Indraprastha. They lost the kingdom in the game of dice the second time, and they keep on traveling across the country, meeting many philosophers, many poets, many sages, and many kinds of topography, many kinds of vegetation, all kinds of animal world, human world, and sometimes mix of these. And they gained strength by their travel. It may be forest life or it may be incognito. If you take our epic, great epic of India, Ramayana, the hero of Ramayana, the name of Ramayana is traveling of Rama. That is the meaning in Sanskrit. Rama ayana iti Ramayana. Ramji ka jo pravas hai wo Ramayana. So he was born in Ayodhya. Already mention of Ayodhya's connection with Korea has been mentioned very well. And he traveled to south of India. First he came to the central part of India, and he came to the end of the, means up to the Lanka. Again he came, went back. Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia, a very great thinker of India, one of the followers of Mahatma Gandhiji. He has written a beautiful paper or an article. It is known as Rama Krishna Shiva. It's a very beautiful article. In my request to this assembly of scholars is, it should be translated both to Vietnamese and Korean language if it is not done, because it speaks volumes. Though it is 3 to 4 pages of article, it speaks volumes about Indian culture and its art. He says Shiva is a character who cannot be imagined, means he is beyond your imagination. Therefore he is Nirakar, he has no shape. Therefore he is in the form of Linga. Means Indian culture, one aspect is that how much ever you describe, some of the elements are kept out of the definition because it is inexplicable, only it can be experienced. Second part, he mentions about Rama, that he is very ideal, means he put one frame to his life and he walked in that frame, and he became a model king, and he became an Adarsha, means a very ideal king for the ancient kingdoms. And still now, during the time of Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, the ideal state, Gandhiji called it as the state of Ramarajya. And third one is Krishna. Whatever the shackles were there, whatever the boundaries were there, whatever the outdated frameworks were there, he was happy to break it. Rama is very happy to be in that frame because he was living in a different milieu, whereas Krishna was in a different yuga or different age. He is redefining it. Therefore, he gave the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. Means these three important characters, Rama from Ramayana, Krishna from Mahabharata and Bhagavat literature, and Shiva from various tribal mythologies and the epics related to Shiva. If we understand this along with the feminine principle of Shakti, then the same principle we can apply to the entire Asian cultures, at least in the South Asian cultures. Take a very specific example. The Indian mother worship cult came to Vietnam when the Buddhism and Hinduism reached the offshores of Vietnam way back in 2000 years back. And the people in the central province of Vietnam, in the Da Nang and the next near areas, Ninh Thuan and Vinh Thuan areas, they inculcated the Indian mother worship tradition, mother goddess tradition, what we call in India as the Devi Shakti Puja. And they a syncretic culture was developed. And now there is a temple dedicated to an Indian goddess who is Vietnamized. And it is well known in central part of Vietnam. Means this syncretic nature, this synthesis, it is always give and take. That has happened in the case of Asian cultures in their interaction with India. Because as Swami Vivekananda has told many a times, India's interaction with the world is always with friendliness, always with philosophy, as already mentioned by Sinhaji. In one of the inscriptions in Mexico, it mentions that every Hindu is a born philosopher. Hindu ka matlab, it's not a restricted idea. Person who is born in Hindustan, India. We come up with some philosophical idea, and the world will adopt it and adapt it to accordingly to their own historical and socio-economical and cultural. So like we are famous in setting the frames. And within that frame, different philosophies will emerge. Therefore, in the coming days, the philosophical foundations of Vietnamese culture and philosophical foundations of Indian culture and that of the Korean culture, if these three can be simultaneously studied as a comparative study in different branches of knowledge, it may be anthropology, it may be sociology, it may be history, it may be ancient practices of economics or medieval practice of economic tradition, and all other their fairs and festivals and whatnot, or cuisines and other things, and their paddy fields and their agriculture. Then my grand dream, I'm not telling vision, my grand wish and dream is that there is a writing from Gayatri Spivak, a famous feminist who translated Derrida into English, Jacques Derrida. She writes a paper asking that who speaks for the third world. Like, I'm telling it in a different context, that there is Asia which wants to speak in one single voice. For that, we can give a philosophical foundation which is already there. Like, it may be the philosophy from Lord Buddha, or it may be the philosophy from Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads, or it may be from our folk wisdom. We should never forget our folk wisdom. That is very important. That is called as the Lok Sahitya in Hindi. Is very important. So with these combinations, if we extend our branches of knowledge and exchange at each single point of corresponding contact in the branches of knowledge of those countries, then something wonderful, which hitherto the European scholars were not able to experience or express because of their cultural backgrounds, are waiting for us, that may emerge. Like, I will conclude by saying my favorite author, Ananda Kumara Swamy, a famous art historian, he says, what India can contribute to the world. That was one of his important paper in the book called Dance of Shiva. First paper, first article. In that he says, India can contribute to the world its Indianness. That's the thing which we can contribute. If we very concretely and in a very broader perspective, if we can start connecting our Indianness to the Vietnamese sensibility and to the Korean sensibility of culture, then something wonderful will emerge from this seminar as the output of the seminar. Therefore, I take this opportunity to congratulate both the speakers and also all the three ambassadors from the different parts of our globe. And now through internet, the message of the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is a family, has become true. That I can see the Korean faces, the Indian faces, the Vietnamese faces, all connected through internet, because this is, we are living in the real global age, and more knowledge becomes transparent, more and more knowledge is available to every cross-section of the society, every gender, across the world. Therefore, the amount of hindrances, the amount of unknown factors which will stop the dialogues will be diluted, and the prakash, or the knowledge of Indian culture and all other cultures, will equally be come into the forefront for the benefit of the world, for the benefit of the environment, and for benefit of everyone who are living today and who are yet to be born tomorrow. So thank you so much. This world is not only for us, we need to keep this world for the next generations together. And therefore, I take this opportunity to congratulate, and I show my respect to all these speakers who have given such wonderful speeches. Later, Sonuji, if this can be brought out as a publication, that will be wonderful. We can think about that also, with more inputs from other scholars and others who have joined. It can be a joint publication also, if possible. We should do that. So with these words, I conclude, and I say thanks to Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center Seoul and all the three embassies and all the dignitaries who have given their valuable time for this wonderful seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harisha, for your sharing your wisdom and great insights about the cultural connect, and also giving a spiritual context to your concluding remarks. Many thanks for that. And let me, though you have already given the vote of thanks, but let me just quickly pinpoint the major takeaways, like as it has been pointed out by the dignitaries, honorable ambassadors, as well as the two scholars, Dr. Na and Dr. Lee. So basically, the need of the time is that we should focus on cultural connect. And yes, the need of the time also is to bridge the cultural gap that we have between the three countries that we are just talking about. And let's move beyond these three countries. And yes, we must try to connect with other parts of the world and try to bridge this gap that we have. And yes, I truly agree with the idea of Dr. Na that we should work on the collaborative research projects between various institutions of all the three countries, and that is how we can contribute our bit to the knowledge building, because just having these talks and ending the webinars, conferences, that will not make a difference. So spoken words can be forgotten, but it has to be brought out. And yes, I truly agree with you, Dr. Harisha, that we need to work on the publication. We would try to extend our invitation to other scholars in both the countries, in Korea, in Vietnam, as well as in India, who are actually interested in working on historical and cultural linkages between these three countries. And yes, we can try to bring out a joint publication out of the two cultural centers, and that would be a great contribution from our side. So let's we promise to work on that. And we also request all the other participants, anyone who is interested. I have shared my email ID. You can also share, like if you are interested to be connected with us and also with Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Hanoi. Please write to them also, and we will help you connect with the other scholars, as well as if you any other research scholar who is interested in contributing any article, any paper, or your inputs. Please do write to us. We would be happy to connect to you. With these words, let me once again thank all the speakers, all the dignitaries present here today. Though the respective, all the three ambassadors, they had their own engagement, but yes, they were here with us for almost 1.5 hours. So thank you, Ambassador Sripriya Ranganathan, Ambassador Pranay Verma, and Ambassador Pham San Chao for being here. We also had the director of the Korean Cultural Center from India joining us here, and Dr. Na also had some important engagement. But thank you, Dr. Na, for sharing your insights. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. And Professor Lee, it's a delight always again to hear from you. And we would bother you more often to hear more from you. And thank you also for asking your students to also connect. So that was really great, Professor Lee, to connect with you. And yes, finally, Dr. Harisha, for agreeing to collaborate and bringing all the scholars and students and scholars, researchers from Vietnam also to connect. So I'm sure this is going to be a great work in future. And with this, I also once again thank all the participants here. At one point of time, we had almost 140 to 150 participants, and still at the time of concluding also we have, I can see 96 in the list. So thanks a lot to all the participants. In fact, it is only because of you that we are here. And in fact, if we just speak amongst ourselves, it will not make a difference. So many thanks for joining us here today. And we hope to engage with you for several other occasions. And thank you to all the participants once again.